I'm going to start with what I was going to end with. Because as Tim was talking about what matters, and this is kind of neat, so you'll know when I'm done. What matters most in the end matters most now. I want you to think and reflect on that as he talked us through those 6 questions. He talked about what matters. And what I'm going to share in just a few minutes is really just some things to kind of challenge you to think about time, to make sure that whenever you are spending your time, because it's so precious, that hopefully you'll realize that what you want to do today, and what I try to do every day, and I'm not going to tell you I do it perfect, but I really do try to do it every day, is make sure that what I'm doing matters today will matter in the end. So it's got to matter right now. So let me just stop and kind of pause and go back where I was going to start. First, Tim, thank you for coming and for inviting me. And Spencer, thank you and your guys for that great food and just to be serving. I loved hearing your story about what you're doing in business and how you're serving the Lord. That's pretty awesome. And I only wish when I was that young as you were, that I really was kind of thinking like that. But, and I want to recognize I got 3 guys here that came from First Southern. I didn't invite them. I'm not sure who did. And I guess they were just making sure I was still on the payroll or something. I'm not sure. But what I want to tell you is these guys and the rest of our folks, they make us look good. And I love every one of them. They're not coworkers. They're friends. They're brothers. They're awesome. And you'll understand maybe in just a few minutes how big a job they've got to try to make me look good anyway. But coming here tonight, I had no idea I was going to see Mr. Dean Warren. Dean and I have known each other now almost 40 years. And he's been a real inspiration to me, and to get to meet his son back there, Rob, is really a pleasure. Bowling Green has always been a special place, even before we had a bank here. My brother went to school here a couple of years back in the early 70s, back whenever, the Hilltoppers had the great basketball teams, and I followed them and loved watching them. It was a real joy. And so getting to come here tonight was just a lot of time. Just to back up a little bit, Dean and I was talking a little bit. I started when I was 24 years old with Jess Carell. I was the second person he ever hired. I graduated Lincoln County High School, and I never went to college. There's some things that happened with my father, and it just wasn't meant to be. I went in for business for myself. I ended up getting my real estate broker's license. I shared I was an auctioneer. That's what I was doing when I met Jess. I officiated high school and small college basketball. Called my last boys high school basketball game in 1998 on Diddle Arena in the finals of the 4th region. Been down here a lot to call a lot of ball games. Had a lot of great times, met a lot of great people. But one of the things I found interesting was that at age 24, when I became an employee of what was then Lincoln County National Bank, $25 million in assets. Today our bank is about $1.1 billion. With our life insurance, about $350 million. It's about a $1.5 billion organization. It's kind of amazing to watch what God has done through that. And I'm not here to talk a lot about that, but I just want you to understand, here's a guy that never went to college, and yes, I am CEO of both of our holding companies. One of them's publicly traded. I'm just kind of in awe of what I get to do, and the fact that these guys know that I don't know a whole lot makes their job a whole lot harder to try to make us look good, and they do a great job, as I said earlier. But one of the things I found interesting when I first started was just going to work, how all of a sudden I was like supposed to be some expert about something. People used to ask you 39 years ago when I started, hey, what's interest rates going to do? That's all people wanted to know as a banker. And it was like, okay, I've been here 2 weeks. I've been asked this 3 times. And it's like, I'm supposed to have some magic ball I get to look into, and it's going to tell me so I could tell them, because they wanted to know whether to fix the rate on the loan or go variable, or do they invest their CDs, which we don't hardly have any more of because they've gone somewhere else. But, do they go 6 months, 3 years, 5 years? What was interest rates going to do? It's just always a question. It's a question. I don't remember the last time somebody asked me what I thought interest rates was going to do. I'm still looking for that magic ball that might help me. But what was interesting through all that was just to understand a little bit in that I was on a journey. And for me, now being at this 40 years makes me realize I don't know a whole lot, and I don't need to know a whole lot. I just need to know where to go and where to ask. And obviously the Lord's it, but the Lord can bring to you so many other places, from fellow brothers, fellow believers, through the Word. Sometimes just being quiet. I've had many times, believe me, he talked about being in Springfield, Illinois. I grew up in Kentucky. I went there. I never lived more than about 30 miles from where I was born and raised until I went to Springfield, Illinois. That was quite a culture shock. But, the Lord took me there, and I learned a lot while I was there, and I'm grateful that the Lord brought me back so I could be here. But I left a lot of great friends behind there. But what I do, I get to spend a lot of time in a lot of places. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. William Penn said this. He said, time is what we want most, but what we use worst. Think about that. Let me tell you how it really hit me hard. I'm 63 years old, and a couple of years ago, I've got 3 kids. One's in Brooklyn, New York, one's in Huntsville, Alabama, and one's kind of there in central Kentucky, not too far from me. I'm sitting in church, and I've got all 3 of my grandkids. I've got all 3 of my kids, and I've got my 2 son-in-laws, and I've got my wife. Now, thinking like in the insurance business, especially the life insurance, you start to think about actuaries and how long is this going to last. At 63 years old, and let's go back, I was a couple of years ago, 61. My daddy died when he was 78. I remember sitting in church thinking, I can do this math. I can do this math. How many more times do I get to sit in church with all my family? I only get to kind of get all of them together about once a year. That's 17 times. And 2 of those years are already gone. And I'm not going to get to do that every year. So how many days am I down to? Now, for you young guys in the room, it may not sound, like it's very imminent. That you don't have to think about stuff like this. I didn't for a while, but then I got to where I did over time. And you start thinking about your life in times of, I've only got maybe 10 days to be in church. I want to make them last. I want to make them work. I'm going to be present in the moment and not somewhere else. My wife says, this right here, the only thing she ever sees me make this thing go away, it seems like, is when that 14-year-old grandson shows up or those 2 little granddaughters. But you know what? I don't want it to be that way. I want it to be where she will say, I was always present with her. I was always present with the Lord. I was always there present in an opportunity that presented myself to help somebody else. Because again, what matters most in the end matters most now. It doesn't matter 4 years from now, 5 years from now. It matters right now. I like to think like a banker. So if I sit to you, and some of you may have heard, actually it's in the book, and I say to you, okay, I'm going to give you $1,440 every single day for the rest of your life, especially some of you young guys. Every single day, the rest of your life, you're going to get $1,440. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? But here's the catch. What you don't use, I get back. Whatever you do not use, I get back. What are you going to do with it? I remember when that question was first given to me many years ago, it didn't take me long to say, well, I'm going to spend it. I'm going to spend all of it. I've asked that question to some people, and someone said, well, I'm going to give some away. Well, I'm going to help this over here. Good answers. But here's the catch. Every day you're given 1,440 minutes in which to live. And once you spend them, they're done. They're gone. And baby, they ain't coming back. Today, I consider it an honor to be here. I love spending the time with the guys from Bowling Green. I came down early and got to hang out at the bank and visit, laugh, told some stories. They got me telling some basketball stories. And if you ever get me started on it, I probably won't stop because those were fun times for me. Now, I know that's hard to believe for most referees. You think they get yelled at all the time, but I generally had some pretty quick wit to come back. But let me get real with you. I enjoyed basketball. I loved it. 21 years of marriage, my first wife left me. I am not going to tell you that I don't sometimes wonder, was those nights out on a basketball court, driving 2 hours to Bowling Green, Kentucky to call a ball game and then 2 hours back home, was that time well spent? I don't know. I'll tell you, when I called the state finals one year and I ran into Steele Harmon, one of my good friends who's started the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in the state of Kentucky, and I asked him to come in and say prayer. He's an old football coach with other official before we called the game. He was like, he told me later on, he goes, do you know how uncomfortable that was? He said, after all I've said to all officials and me have to come in and pray for you before you went out, I hope I was a witness during that time. But I'm not sure that it didn't really kind of contribute a little bit to the failure of my marriage. Now, if you talk to people that knew her and knew me, they'll tell you no. But you know what? It's not one-sided. What I come to realize is, another saying, it's one of my favorites of all my life is, though you can't go back and begin again, my friend, anybody can start from now and make a brand new end. I don't know any person that's gotten towards the end of their life and didn't have regrets. You're going to have them. But if you start to stop and think about the time you're spending, where you're at, and who you're with, and is this really fruitful? I think you can create that ending that you want, and you will realize that what you're doing right now is going to matter now, and it's going to matter in the end. So where do I spend my time? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Vince Carell, who's a partner of my brother, and Dean knew him well. Dean delivered a big check because we didn't expect it to happen. I think Vince was 36 years old, 37. January, he's at a board meeting. The next day, he has a convulsion. 6 months later, we bury him, massive brain tumor. Before Vince died, he videoed himself, and I don't know if Dean remembers this, but he said, you want to know, he was talking about time and relationships, and he said, you want to figure out where you're at? He said, look at your checkbook. Where do you spend your time? That's what you care about. Look at your checkbook. I haven't seen that video in years. I probably ought to try to find it somewhere, but it was true. For me, I want to hopefully look at my checkbook now, and somebody's going to be able to look at it and say, well, you know what? He cared about others. He cared about the Lord. So where do I spend my time? In relationships, obviously with the Lord, with my wife, with my family. But how do I know that I'm doing that? Well, I'll tell you what I do. I ask them. And I'm going to give you a little hint. You can't ask them one time. You're going to have to ask them about 3 times before they're probably going to give you a dead level serious answer. Hey, honey, we good? I just want to make sure. Am I spending my time where you want it to be? Yeah, sure, honey. Hey, Debbie, I'm really serious about this. I kind of worry about it. Is there anything I'm doing I ought not be doing or something that just kind of frustrates you sometimes? No, honey, I want to get better. We just buried a friend, and how do I know? I've got to know. Tell me one thing that you'd like to see me change. Now, I'm going to tell you, when you ask that question, you better be ready to hear the answer, and you better be ready to make the change. And if it's not her, maybe it's a good friend. Maybe it's a child. Several father-sons in here tonight. Praise God. Love it. I ask a lot of my friends and co-workers, hey, what can I do better? What can I change? 28 years old, Jess Correll makes me CEO of the bank in Monticello, Kentucky, and I still had some hair. I was losing it. And I had a lady in my office one day, and I said, and her name was Kathy Brown. I always called her Kathy Blue just as out of fun. And she's still living one of my, I call her on a regular basis. I said, Kathy, I said, tell me, if there's one thing, I'd been CEO of this bank probably about 9 months. I said, if there's one thing I could do differently, what would it be? And she goes, why, James? She always called me James. Why, James? There's nothing. I mean, we're just so happy to have you here and blah, blah, blah. I said, you know, Kathy, I really appreciate that, but I'm young and I got a lot to learn. What's something that I could do? James, you just need to quit thinking about that. And finally I said, Kathy, there was only one perfect person, and it was Jesus, and they crucified him, and I really want to serve everybody well. What can I do? I asked her 3 questions, and finally she said, well, you know, James, some days in the morning you're just a little moody. I went home, thought about it, came back. I was always the first person in the office, always. I was the first person in the office the next morning. She was the second person, and she was never the second person. She was always later. She came marching right in my office. She goes, James, I want to apologize. I said, I shouldn't have said what I said to you. And I said, no, Kathy. I'm not going to accept it. I asked you, you answered. And you know what? I think what's happened is I probably have been a little moody sometimes, but sometimes because I have been just a little bit, there's other times I'm perceived to be that way. And I'm going to change what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to work. Because what was happening was my office had glass, and most of the days everybody come in, and I'd wave at them and blah, blah, blah. But some days I'd just be really busy, and I wouldn't even look up, and they thought I was in a bad mood. So I decided when I had a lot to do, I was just going to come in and shut my door. That was their signal, hey, I'm busy. But then when I got done, I got up and I walked around, and I said, hello, good morning to every one of them. Because, you know, every organization is a direct reflection of its leader. And if I'm going to be in a bad mood, guess what? They're going to be in a bad mood. If they're in a bad mood, guess what? The customer's going to feel the effects of that. It's going to have a ripple effect, just like dropping a rock in a pond. And so, ask. Trust those that you know and love the most. Hey, what are we doing? What can we do better? What do I want to accomplish? We like to tell everybody you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. Think about that for a second. I don't care how old you are. I'm still green and growing. And I want to keep growing, green and growing. And I've told Jess, my partner, a couple of times, hey, when I'm not adding value, when I'm not doing, tell me. Because I don't want to be ripe and rotting here. I'll go find something else. You know, I'll cut back. I'll direct my attention somewhere else. Because I want to spend my time having impact. One of the things that we talk about in our company all the time, we want to have triple bottom line impact. That's economic, social, and spiritual. Economics, have a strong company with great earnings. Social capital, you mentioned some of it. Stanford, Kentucky, come up there, look at what we're doing, trying to create jobs, trying to create opportunities, trying to create back almost like a way of life. It's like coming back to Mayberry. I sometimes think I get to kind of a little immune to it because I get to be around it every day. But when other people show up and see it, they're just amazed. In spiritual capital, there's a lot of ways to do it, but investing in others. In our company, we give away 10% of our pre-tax earnings. Been doing it since 1988. But we've got lots of other programs. We allow people to go on mission trips, and we even pay for part of it. That's how we're investing in the time of others to grow them, because we want not only to be growing ourselves, but to grow others. You know, they're talking about the great resignation right now. I don't know, through COVID, and people are leaving jobs left and right. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. We've lost some folks. But we haven't lost many, because we've always had a purpose that's bigger than just making money or making money for shareholders. It's always been about, let's spread the gospel. Let's teach others about the Lord. Let's make sure that they know who He is and what He's about. We want to grow people. If you look at, again, in the book, my personal mission statement is to use the platform I've been given to grow people, grow them spiritually, emotionally, professionally. It's very important. Each of you are doing it. The question is, are you growing them the right way? How many of you have ever seen the movie Schindler's List? I see a lot of hands. I mean, here was a guy that, when you watch the movie and you know it was kind of based on a true story, I always worry about what kind of liberties they take with making movies, but based on a true story. Do you remember the scene kind of at the end when the war's over and he's out and he's getting ready to get in the car and go away, and all these people are thanking him and praising him for all he did, and he goes, and he just becomes overwhelmed and he goes, I could have done more. I could have done more. Look, this pen, this gold pen, I could have sold it. That could have saved one more life. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch that. Because I want to tell you something. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be looking at the end of my life and saying, I could have done more. I don't have much time left. And I got news for you. None of you do either, and I don't care how young you are. About 3 blinks of the eye and you'll be just my age. Or maybe even a little bit older. You don't want to be there. Think about how you're using your time. Remember, you've only got 1,440 minutes every day. Use it wisely. I'm not going to tell you how. Only you can figure that out. Other people can speak into you and help you. And I'd encourage you, don't try to figure it out on your own. Remember this. I think something's going on here when Tim gets up and when he's supposed to talk and talks about what matters. What matters. What matters most in the end matters most now. I've actually got that statement taped to my screen in my office because I want to be reminded of it every single day of my life because I don't want to miss it. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here. It's been wonderful. It's been great meeting all of you, and I hope and pray that God only continues to grow this group. Tim, great ministry. Keep up the awesome work. Love you. Praise God. Thank you all.